So now let me formally welcome you. Thank you very much for coming. Good evening, everybody. And we are in the middle of what we started a series of classes on the topic of Shabbat. So last week we spoke mostly about the general idea of what Shabbat is all about. And if you weren't here, you can watch the video on nonstoptorah.com. But tonight, the class is dedicated to the topic of preparation for Shabbat. How do we prepare for Shabbat? And I want to start with the following. Recently, someone told me the following statement. She told me, you know, I never know what time candle lighting is. In other words, she never knows what time candle lighting is. So I guess somehow she has a rough idea, obviously, but she finds out, you know, half an hour before Shabbat, 10 minutes before, I don't know how long before Shabbat, but she doesn't know exactly what time Shabbat starts. Obviously, this is not the way to go about it. I would like you to imagine that some very, very close relatives are coming to visit you from out of town. You haven't seen them for years. Why out of town? Out of the country. You haven't met them for years. You haven't been in touch, you haven't seen them, and now they're coming to visit you, and everybody's excited, everybody wants to see them. And of course, you invited them for dinner. Hello, Rufa. Hi. You invited them for dinner, everybody is excited, everybody is preparing. Now, would it make sense to you that when you hear the bell ringing, you're going to start shouting to one of your daughters, go quickly to the supermarket, go get some soda and cake. And then you shout to the other, your son, do me a favor, go quickly, clear the table and set the table quickly so we can have dinner. And the guests come, they ring the bell, they ring once, nobody comes to open the door. Everybody's busy running around, everybody's busy doing different things. Ring the second time. Finally, the little grandson who just learned how to talk shouts, who's there? But he's not tall enough to open the door, so they have to still wait outside the door. Finally, after they ring the third time, someone comes and opens the door for them. They come in. Half the family is not there because they're outside doing last-minute shopping and preparing. The house is in a mess. Nobody is ready to greet them. Obviously, this is not the way to greet someone that we feel is very, very special, someone that we hold very important and very close to us. This is the Shabbat. Preparation for Shabbat is considered to be a very important and very precious mitzvah. It's very, very important. In other words, Shabbat doesn't start at the time that Shabbat starts for us women at candle lighting time. That's not where Shabbat starts. If you want to know if someone really, really keeps Shabbat properly, go and check and see what they do on Erev Shabbat, because that will really give us an indication of what they do. Come forward, please. Thank you for coming. Wow, kol hakavod. Hello, good evening. Shalom, erev tov. Thank you. So, therefore, how we prepare on Erev Shabbat, on the eve of Shabbat, tells us a lot about what kind of Shabbat we're going to have. Like I told you about this person who said that she never knows what time candlelighting is. So how can she be ready for Shabbat if she has no idea what time she should accept Shabbat? We're told that we should specifically wake up a little earlier on Friday to start our preparation for Shabbat. You know, in the old days, people didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have freezers, so they had to do everything on that day. They would wake up early in the morning on Friday, go to the market, and buy especially stuff that goes bad. I mean, I suppose fruit and vegetables you can buy and store for a length of time, for a few days. But meat, for example, they had to buy on that day and cook it right away, otherwise it would go bad. But nowadays, thank God, we have advanced technology, we have refrigerators, we have freezers, and I really, really strongly suggest that we start preparing for Shabbat in advance. You know, Shabbat is actually, as we said last time, is a source of blessing for the entire week. The entire week, all the days of the week get their blessings. Everything that's good, the shefa, the abundance of good from Shabbat. The way it works is that the previous Shabbat gives its blessing to the 3 days after Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And the upcoming Shabbat is the one that gives blessing to the previous days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. In other words, from Wednesday of the week, we're already getting the blessing from the upcoming Shabbat. The first 3 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we get the blessing from the previous Shabbat. So from Wednesday, one should start preparing for Shabbat. If we try to jam everything and do everything on Friday, I can guarantee that it's not going to work. The Ben Ish Chai tells about two women. He tells about a woman who was always would wake up in the morning, would prepare early for Shabbat. 4 hours before Shabbat, everything is ready. She sits down, all dressed up like a queen, ready to receive the Shabbat. She had another neighbor, a friend, who was always, she always had time. She would wake up in the morning, I guess would take care of all her, check all her emails, then chat on the phone, whatever it is. And then a couple of hours before Shabbat, suddenly wake up and start rushing and preparing, shopping, cleaning, cooking. He tells that one man who already came back from the prayers, he went to early prayers, I guess, like we do here sometimes in the summer on Shabbat, on Friday evening, people start Shabbat a little earlier, already came back from the synagogue, and he passed by, wanted to visit his friend, and he stopped by, and this was this man's wife. He knocks on the door, he sees this lady, Shabbat is about to start, still with all her dirty clothes. The house is in a commotion, everything is, shouts, nothing is in place, everything... Balagan. That's the word that describes it the best, exactly. And he says to her, what's going on? When will you be ready for Shabbat? And what will you do when Shabbat really starts early on Friday? When Shabbat starts at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock? What will you do then? So really, this is something that we all have to plan and make sure that we start all our preparations from Shabbat from already Wednesday. For example, on Wednesday, the house should be cleaned. Some people can even clean, the house should be cleaned for Shabbat if possible. The shopping, or some of the shopping, should be done on Wednesday. So we're done with most of the shopping. We can store things. We have refrigerators. We have big kitchens. Baruch Hashem. Thursday is the time to take care of the cooking. Now, I know everybody loves fresh food that just came out of from the pot on Friday. So, okay, so you can leave, certain things maybe like rice maybe you can do on Friday. It doesn't take so long to do. But we should really, really try and do, especially on a short Shabbat, try and take care of the cooking, of the majority of the cooking on Thursday. This way, on Friday, we're able to really receive the Shabbat, not like those, like I told you at the beginning, like this family who came from out of the country and nobody was ready. Is this the way to receive the Shabbat? That Shabbat comes, Shabbat HaMalka we call it. Shabbat the Queen. Is this the way to receive the Shabbat when we are, still running around? As I mentioned in previous class that we had, one shouts, how many more minutes for sunset? Okay? Can I still take a shower? Can I still iron my shirt? Is there still time to blow my hair? Why is the water gone cold? Don't feel bad. It's not only in your home that it happens, okay? If you're laughing, you're not the only one. But we really, really must train ourselves. Must plan ahead to make sure that we are ready, like this lady that I told you about, who 4 hours before Shabbat. If you can't do it 4 hours, okay. Let's compromise. We'll do it 2 hours. Even 1 hour before Shabbat, you're able to know that that's it. Finished. And when I say finished, I'm not only talking about finished with the cooking. I'm talking about all the preparations, everything that has to take place before Shabbat.
What do we do about the kids that are trying to stay a little longer on their...
So, if you don't mind, let's leave the questions to the end and then we'll get back to it. Now, so part of the preparation that we're supposed to do on Shabbat is take a shower or a bath in hot water. Now, in the winter months, if someone feels that there isn't enough time, it's okay to take a shower on Thursday. However, it's part of the preparation for Shabbat. It's very, very important that even if one takes a shower on Thursday night, we should at least wash our hands, our feet, and our face in warm water. It's written in the Halakha book. Okay? And I want to tell you something very interesting that is mentioned in the Ben Ish Chai. He says that when you wash your hands, let's say you couldn't take a shower, even if you take a shower, he said make sure that you dry your feet properly before you put your shoes on. He says it's not a good idea to wear your shoes when your feet are wet. Okay, one thing that happens on Friday when everybody is busy and when everybody is preparing and when we're preparing for this important guest to come to our home, Shabbat the Queen, what happens? Everything goes wrong. What do you say? Exactly. Everything goes wrong. Exactly that is the time when the small child decides to pull the handle of the pot and the soup that you cooked is spilled on the floor. And is that exactly the time when your husband comes into the kitchen and he said, What is this big mess in this house? It's almost Shabbat. You can't clean the house properly for Shabbat. And this is exactly the time when other things go wrong. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. It is expected. And our rabbis of blessed memory tell us, you should know, and I know that some of you have heard it in the past, but I want to say it again because it's something so important for all of us to be aware of and to know. Our Chachamim tell us that we should know, that we should expect such things to happen. And we should know that Friday night is exactly a time when there's a higher possibility of arguments, of fights, of strife in the house, and we should know that it can happen. And they say, what should we do to avoid it? And that is what they tell us. They tell us the following. Every time when we are involved in doing something that is very holy and very important, what happens? The Satan tries to make us stumble. The Satan tries to stop us from doing this important and holy things. They tell us the same thing about Erev Pesach, which is such an important holiday. Every Friday, when we prepare for Shabbat, the Satan start to work even extra hours. And I want to read for you from the book, the Ben Ish Hai, what it says here about it. He's actually quoting from Rabbanit RUTH, who said the following. He said, Ba'alot HaMincha, on Erev Shabbat, early in the afternoon, is a dangerous time for fights and arguments between man and his wife. And he says, the Sitra Hara, the Satan, really works hard to make sure that there are fights and that things don't go well. And what's the answer? How do we fight the answer? What do we do? He says, make sure that you keep quiet and don't let the Satan succeed in his work. He said, every person who fights with his wife or his children feels that he's in the right. He feels that he's right. His argument is correct. He says, how come the floor is dirty? What, you couldn't, I pay so much money for a cleaning lady to come. You couldn't make sure that the house is clean? And this poor lady, what can she do if her child she has a small child at home and they just made a mess in the living room, or it's some food spilled on the floor? But he says, but you know, it's so close to Shabbat. How can you do it? So she feels that she's in the right, and he feels that he's in the right, and they start fighting. She said, what are you talking about? Instead of coming and shouting at me, you come and help me. Why? It's easy for you to come and shout. Do something about it. He said, what? I pay enough money for the cleaning lady. It's your job. Okay, back and forth, back and forth. Whatever the argument is, doesn't matter. There can be 100 different arguments. All the variations are okay. But he says the following. Everybody feels that they're in the right. And they should fight. And they should win over the fight. But he said, whoever has some brain in their head should know that this is not coming. It's not your wife. It's not your husband. It's not your children. It's not your cleaning lady. It's not the grandchildren. It's none of those people's fault. What is the source for it? Hu ma'aseh Satan. This is the work of the Satan. This is what the Satan is doing to create arguments, to create fights. And he says, and if the Satan is the one who is behind this whole thing, what can the wife or the children do against him? Do they have power against the Satan? He said, understand what the source for it is. Understand where it's coming from. And when you understand, you will say, you know what? I'm going to go hand in hand and support the Satan? Or should I do the opposite? And what's the best policy? He says, Yishtok velo yariv velo yifkaes. Make sure you keep quiet. Don't get angry. Don't get upset. In fact, if anybody feels they want to work on their anger management, the best day to do it, if you want to choose one day, is Friday. Because this is the day that for sure you'll be able to do some improvement in this area. Hard it is, yes, but we have to understand where it's coming from and how careful we must be. And as I said, what we do on Erev Shabbat affects our Shabbat. So if on Friday there's fights and there's argument, it's going to carry over to Shabbat. So this is something that we have to be very, very careful about and understand that this is something that we must avoid. When you prepare for Shabbat, do you play music? I hope so. Very important. Music is something that's really, really, well, obviously this can also be a source of argument because some people like classical music, some people like different music, however. Yeah, different people like different music, but the idea is when we hear music, when there's music in the air, it always creates a good atmosphere. It's always nice. So this is something that helps everybody feel better, more relaxed, and more at ease. It's very, very important when you do anything, preparing for Shabbat, to always tell yourself, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do besimcha. Do everything you have to do for Shabbat besimcha. You're doing your Shabbat. Of course, I think many of you know that when we purchase anything for Shabbat, or when we cook anything for Shabbat, it's very important to say the following 3 words. Lichvod Shabbat Chodesh. Very important. When you buy something for Shabbat, when you cook something for Shabbat, we say those 3 words. Lichvod Shabbat Chodesh. But also, in addition, tell yourself, whatever I'm doing besimcha. Whatever we do in life, you can do the exact same thing. For example, you can give a poor person charity. There's a huge difference whether you give it with a smile or whether you give it because you felt pressure to give it. It's not the same. Let's do it besimcha. Anyway, the work has to be done. Do it happily. And your happiness will affect the other members of the household. It will be contagious. They will also be happy. If they see that when you work for Shabbat and when you prepare for Shabbat, it's not something that is a burden. It's something that you enjoy. It's something that is great to do. They will also feel the same. And of course, we would like them to be involved. We would like to share, to teach them to share the responsibilities. It's very, very important from a young age that our children learn how to be part of the preparation for Shabbat. So they feel that everybody contributes somehow to the preparation of Shabbat. I mentioned in the past, and I'll mention again, that I know that there are some ladies who don't have to do it, but who make a point of setting their table for Shabbat from Thursday night. On Thursday night, the table is already set. I know it's not always possible. Many people use the dining room table for their office work or for their paying the bills or whatever it is. But whenever possible, try it and see what kind of different atmosphere it creates in the house. If on Thursday night the table is already set, there's a beautiful tablecloth on the table, and there's the Shabbat dishes, whatever, with the napkins, everything is on the table, you already feel that the taste of the queen coming into the home, it already creates a certain atmosphere in the house. It's different. Try it, and you will see that it makes a huge difference. They tell about, in the Gemara, that the Amoraim, even though they were great Torah scholars, each and every single one of them used to do something before Shabbat. One of them, you would go and cut some wood to make, in those days they cooked on wood. So he would go and cut wood in order to prepare for Shabbat. Another person would cut salad on Erev Shabbat. Every one of them did something different. So one shouldn't feel, I know you'll tell me, you have to tell this to our husbands. Okay, you can pass on the message. One shouldn't feel that one is too important to do some preparation for Shabbat. In fact, we're told that every single one is obligated to do some type of preparation for Shabbat. Even if it's someone who has a group of servants working for them. One is the cook, the other is the cleaning one, another one, I don't know, whatever it is. Every single person must do something in preparation for Shabbat. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but I know that a few times when I've been away and we stayed in a hotel for Shabbat, usually in Eretz Israel, and there was nothing to do for Shabbat, it's such a different, you just feel that Shabbat is a little different, is somehow different, because you feel that you did not prepare anything for Shabbat. Some people might like it. I suppose a bit of change is nice, but really, you don't feel that it's the same. You feel that something is missing from the Shabbat itself when there isn't the preparation, something that you do for Shabbat. So that's why it's very important to get everybody involved. The children, one of the things that the husband really should do, if possible, is preparing the candles for Shabbat for his wife. We're going to talk as a separate class about Shabbat candles. That's going to be a separate issue, but a separate class, but an issue also. It's good. I mean, it's good. But every single person in the house should do something for Shabbat. Now, it's also a good idea to have some kind of a list where you write everything that has to be done before Shabbat. Because, sometimes you already lit the candles and you said, we forgot to put the hot plate on. Or you already accepted Shabbat and you said, oh my goodness, the light is on in whatever, I don't know, we didn't turn the AC on. So it's a good idea to have a list, type it on your computer, whatever it is, and make a few copies, and just make a checklist. You can even appoint one of your children to be in charge, to go and check that the hot water is on, that there is, we prepared toilet paper for Shabbat. I remember there's a small child. In those days, they didn't have ready-made cut toilet paper. So we used to cut toilet paper for Shabbat. So we had...
Buy the tissue.
Okay, that's right. Of course, but okay, you have to make sure that you have tissues in the house, and you have to make sure that the tissue box is open, right? So make a list of all the different items, whatever you think is important to prepare an Erev Shabbat. This way, make one of your children in charge, let them go and check and make sure that every item on the list is checked and everything is done. Now, for Shabbat, as we said, it's very important to really try and buy the best food that we can. If someone during the week prepares to eat eats 2 different types of food for dinner, on Shabbat we should have an extra dish. Don't worry about the expenses. As we said last time, we're told that all these extra expenses of what we spend for Shabbat, what we prepare for Shabbat, Hashem said, this is on me. I'll take care of it. We're told about Shammai that he used to go to the market every single day of the week. From Sunday, he would go to the market and he would look for something nice for Shabbat. Let's say he would say a beautiful pineapple. He said, wow, such a beautiful pineapple, I'm buying this for Shabbat. On Monday, he would go to the market again. And he would see, wow, even a pineapple that was more sweet smelling. He would say, you know what, I'm taking this Lichavot Shabbat. He would try the whole week. He would go out to the market and would buy something for Shabbat. To prepare something special for Shabbat. We're told about another Hacham who, let's say, if he wanted to buy 10 loaves of bread, you know what he would do? On Friday, he would go out of his house, would buy 1 loaf of bread, come back. Go out again, buy the 2nd loaf of bread. Go out and repeat this 10 times. Go 10 times to buy his 10 loaves of bread. Why? Because, as I told you, preparing for Shabbat, just the preparation itself, buying whatever we need, cooking whatever we need, is a very important mitzvah that we should really take seriously and feel the importance of it. I know that in many schools, this is one of a very popular story, but it's actually a very meaningful story, so I'd like to share it with you. There was a gentleman, a man, called Yosef, and for him, Shabbat was one of the most important things in his life. And every time he would do exactly the same. He would try and buy the best food for Shabbat, the best fish for Shabbat, the best bread, whatever it is. He had a non-Jew neighbor. And this non-Jew neighbor was told in a dream that this neighbor of his, the Jew, Yosef, is one day going to inherit all his wealth and all his money. Everything he has is going to belong to Yosef. This man was so upset. He said, what am I going to do? How is it possible for me to try and avoid this from happening? He had an idea. He sold everything he had and purchased a beautiful, precious stone. A very precious stone. Let's say it was a diamond, whatever it is. And he said, now, this precious stone I'm going to keep with me. The best and the safest place for me to keep it is on my head, under my hat. This way it will be right there. Wherever I go, it will be with me. Nothing will be going to happen to me. And this was just a bad dream. Some time has passed. One day he was walking on a bridge and there was strong wind. The wind blew his hat off, and of course, with his hat, the precious stone also was blown away and thrown into the river. You may imagine, but that's when the stone went into the river, a fish saw the stone, the precious stone, and swallowed it. And some time after that, it was this fish's fate to be caught by one of the fishermen, and this fish was sold to the fish store in the neighborhood. But it was a huge fish. Nobody wanted to buy it. Obviously, the bigger the fish is, the more expensive it is. Nobody wanted to buy it. This fish owner said, I know who will buy this fish for me. Yosef, who doesn't care about Shabbat expenses. If there is something beautiful and something that is worth it, he for sure will spend the money. Let me get him. He gets Yosef. He said, Yosef, look at this beautiful fish that I got here. Would you like to buy it for Shabbat? He said, of course. Thank you very much for giving me the honor. And of course, he bought the fish. And we're told that when he came home, he found the precious stone that belonged to his non-Jew neighbor. So what we see from here, we really try to show how important Shabbat is by how we prepare for Shabbat. And not to worry about, I'm not saying that a person should overspend beyond one's ability, but if you see something special fruit that you want to buy for Shabbat, or some special dessert, it's okay. Allow yourself to do it.
Only food?
What else?
Maybe a nice dress.
I want to talk about clothes now. Okay. Very, very important to make sure that we change our clothing for Shabbat. I want you to know, the Arizal said, in those days, people had 2 sets of clothing. They didn't have a whole wardrobe full of clothes from one end to the other. They had 2 sets of clothing, one for every day and one for Shabbat. And he said that one should make sure that his Shabbat clothing are completely separate from his everyday clothes. He even speaks about the undergarments. Nowadays, it's a little difficult. I mean, we live at a different, if someone wants to do it, by all means, but it's a little difficult, but at least we have to make sure that we wear special clothes for Shabbat. Don't we feel different when we dress nicely? Of course. I know of a family who has small children, and I noticed that I've seen them a few times on Shabbat, and I've noticed that those children hardly ever, it's a young religious family, hardly ever change and wear nice clothes for Shabbat. And I have a strong feeling that these children miss something important about their connection and specialty and beauty of Shabbat. Because nice clothes make us feel different. It's important. It's important to wear nice clothes, not only when we go to the synagogue for the prayers, even when we come back and we sit and have our meals, we should still wear nice Shabbat clothes. And now, I'm going to read to you something that the Ben Ish Chai writes. I know it's going to be a little revolutionary, but with your permission, I'm going to read it. It's not my words. I'm quoting here from the Ben Ish Chai. And he writes the following. He starts writing that a person should try and set aside good and clean clothes for Shabbat. And then he writes the following. ويזהר אדם שלא ילבש בגדים שחורים בשבת. One should be careful not to wear black clothes on Shabbat. And he said, ואפילו עוברי דרכים ייזהרו שלא ללבש בגדי חול ובגדים שחורים בשבת. Even travelers, people who travel, and they're, in those days, I guess people took long trips. They were on the camels for 3 weeks, whatever, longer times, very long journeys. He said, even those who travel for long journeys must make sure that before Shabbat, they change from their everyday clothing and wear their special Shabbat clothes. And even then, he said, should be careful not to wear black clothes. Now, I know that there is an opinion, once, it's a funny story, once we had to go, my husband and I had to go to a Shiv'ah, and we also had a wedding. So we went from one extreme, from a sad occasion to a very happy occasion. And my husband made a comment, nowadays you don't know the difference. You go to this to a shiva, everybody wears black. You go to the wedding, everybody wears black. So nowadays, and there are some people of the
It's make you skinny.
Navy blue also makes you skinny. So nowadays, we cannot say that people, but still, many people associate the color black with mourning. And I know that there is an opinion that black is maybe very elegant. However, I'm just reading to you what he writes here.
He's writing
for men and women, yes.
Men usually wear black.
I want to tell you,
White shirt and
for example, if you think about all the great Mekubalim, when Friday came, they all changed and wore specifically white. But none of those big rabbis wore black on Shabbat. So, again, I'm telling you that there are different opinions, but I think you should be aware of the fact that, Baruch Hashem, there are lots of beautiful colors in the world, and one can find many beautiful and cheerful colors and elegant clothes, which are not necessarily black. But that is something that I would like to think about. Okay. Just to summarize, please have a plan every week. Start from now. I would like you to have this type of home. I would like all of us to have this type of home where if Shabbat comes at 6 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, the house is ready. At 5, okay, as I said, let's compromise. 5 o'clock. The only way to do it is if we do most of the work in advance. It's not possible, even if we wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's not possible to do everything that has to be done. Believe me, your husband and your children will enjoy the food even if it's prepared from Thursday. I can assure you. What does one want more? To have tranquility and peace of mind and a pleasant atmosphere when Shabbat comes in, or to have tension and fights and last-minute things and nothing works out. It makes such a huge difference to the entire Shabbat. It's so important. And is it possible? Yes, it's possible. I wanted to know, I read in one magazine some time ago that there's a family that does the following. Every Friday afternoon, the house is already ready for Shabbat. Everything is ready. The family, 2 hours before Shabbat, sits together and they play games together. Isn't it nice?
Very nice.
Not many other options. So, okay, you don't want to play games in the afternoon with your children? It's fine. However, please, this is something so important, and it will really make the whole difference of the taste and the holiness and the feel of the Shabbat. To start early.